The Nun's Dark Secrets. In the shadows of a forgotten village, whispers of an ancient evil linger like smoke. The locals speak in hushed tones of the nun, a specter draped in black, wandering the crumbling halls of an abandoned convent. But what if the tales of this tormented soul go deeper than mere folklore? What if the truth behind the nun's horror is a twisted web of betrayal, madness, and unholy secrets? Join us as we journey into the heart of darkness, unveiling the chilling reality that lies behind the legend of the nun. The village of Eldermere was shrouded in mist, the kind that clung to your skin like a warning. Once vibrant with laughter and life, the village now stood as a mere echo of its past, haunted by memories of sorrow. At its center loomed the old convent, a crumbling edifice, its Gothic architecture twisted by time and neglect. Overgrown ivy snaked its way up the stone walls, while shattered stained-glass windows glinted like jagged teeth in the pale light. For generations, the convent had been a place of refuge and worship, but after a series of strange occurrences, it had become a house of dread. As twilight descended, casting an eerie glow over Eldermere, the air thickened with tension. It was on one such evening that a young journalist named Clara arrived, drawn by the legends that had seeped into her dreams. With her camera in hand and determination in her heart, she intended to unravel the mysteries that clung to the nun like a shroud. She believed that, by exposing the truth, she could put the restless spirit to rest, if indeed there was any truth to find. Clara began her exploration in the village tavern, where the flickering candlelight seemed to dance with shadows. The patrons regarded her with a mix of curiosity and disdain, their conversations dropping to whispers whenever she mentioned the nun. One weathered man, his face etched with lines of fear, leaned closer and said, "You don't want to go there, lass. The nun's curse is real. She doesn't rest easy." Undeterred, Clara pressed him for details. What happened at the convent? Why does she haunt the village? The man shifted uneasily, glancing around as if the walls themselves were listening. They say she was once a woman of God, devoted to her faith. But something twisted in her. They locked her away when she lost her mind. Her screams echoed through the halls until she disappeared. Intrigued yet unsettled, Clara took her leave, the weight of the man's words heavy in her heart. As she approached the convent, the air grew colder, the trees surrounding the building whispering secrets only the wind could understand. Stepping through the rusted gates, she felt a chill run down her spine, as though the very ground beneath her was warning her to turn back. Inside, the convent was a mausoleum of forgotten dreams. Dust motes floated in the dim light, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath her feet. Clara's heart raced as she navigated through the derelict hallways, her footsteps echoing like a heartbeat in the stillness. Each room she entered was a shrine to decay, but she sensed something more, a presence that lurked just beyond the edges of her vision. In the chapel, where once the faithful gathered, Clara found remnants of a bygone era. The altar was draped in cobwebs, and candles lay melted into grotesque shapes. As she raised her camera to capture the haunting beauty, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A shadow darted past the doorway, gone before she could focus. Her breath caught in her throat. Curiosity battled with fear. Determined to uncover the truth, Clara pressed on, her instincts guiding her deeper into the convent's heart. She stumbled upon a small library filled with dusty tomes and manuscripts, their spines cracked and faded. As she leafed through the pages, one title caught her eye, The Fall of Sister Agnes. The words felt like a punch to her gut. Sister Agnes was the nun, the woman who had succumbed to madness. The pages spoke of her devotion, her fierce belief in her faith, and how it twisted into fanaticism. Clara's fingers trembled as she read about the voices that plagued Sister Agnes, whispers that told her she was chosen to eradicate evil. The final entries described her descent into darkness, her screams echoing through the convent as she battled her inner demons. Clara could feel the weight of Agnes's anguish, an electric tension that sparked in the air around her. Suddenly, a sharp noise broke the silence, a crash reverberating through the hallways. Heart racing, Clara rushed toward the sound, her pulse pounding in her ears. As she turned a corner, she found herself face to face with a mirror, its surface tarnished and cracked. In the reflection, she glimpsed a fleeting figure, a silhouette cloaked in black. Panic surged, but curiosity compelled her to step closer. "Is someone there?" she called, her voice quavering. The only response was the echo of her own words. She turned to leave, but a chill swept through the corridor, halting her in place. The air felt thicker, charged with an energy she couldn't comprehend. Clara took a deep breath, gathering her courage. She had come too far to turn back now. As she explored deeper into the convent, the atmosphere shifted. Shadows seemed to stretch and coil around her, whispering her name, beckoning her into the darkness. Clara stumbled upon a door that had been hidden behind a tapestry, its wood aged and warped. A sense of foreboding washed over her, yet she felt an undeniable pull to discover what lay beyond. Pushing the door open, she was met with a room drenched in darkness. The air was heavy, saturated with the scent of decay. Clara flicked on her flashlight, illuminating a series of grim drawings adorning the walls. They depicted Sister Agnes, her features contorted in anguish, surrounded by grotesque figures. The illustrations captured her madness, lost in a labyrinth of her own making, tormented by the very faith she once cherished. Clara's stomach churned as she traced the lines with her eyes. The last drawing caught her breath, a figure resembling the nun, her eyes hollow, a mouth twisted in a scream. Below it were scrawled words that sent shivers down Clara's spine. She is here. She is watching. She cannot rest. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing her flashlight. Darkness enveloped her, a suffocating blanket that seemed to pulse with life. Clara's heart raced as she fumbled for her phone, using its weak light to navigate the encroaching shadows. The temperature plummeted, and she felt a presence beside her, unseen yet palpable. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The darkness responded with silence, thick and heavy, before a faint whisper reached her ears, chilling her to the bone. "Leave. Now." Clara's breath quickened, panic gripping her as she turned to flee. But the door slammed shut, trapping her within the darkened chamber. Desperation clawed at her chest as she pounded against the door, her cries echoing in the suffocating gloom. "Let me out, please." Her consciousness. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices rising around her, filling her mind with visions of despair and torment. She stumbled back, tripping over something on the floor, an old, dusty cross. Clutching the cross, Clara felt a surge of warmth, a fleeting connection to hope. "I'm not afraid," she shouted into the void, her voice breaking through the darkness. But the whispers only grew stronger, drowning her defiance in a sea of despair. Just when she thought she would succumb to the shadows, the door creaked open. Gasping for breath, Clara bolted from the chamber, racing down the hallways that seemed to stretch on forever. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, and she could feel the nun's presence looming behind her, a dark specter of despair. "Get out," she urged herself, pushing through the oppressive atmosphere. Bursting into the chapel, Clara stumbled to a halt, breathless and terrified. The room was eerily still, the altar casting long shadows that flickered like flames. In that moment of stillness, she caught sight of the figure, the nun, standing in the far corner, her face obscured by the cowl. "Why are you here?" the nun's voice echoed, filled with anguish and rage. Clara's heart pounded as she searched for the courage to respond. "I came to uncover the truth." The nun took a step forward, her eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. "You seek the truth, but truth is a double-edged sword. It can cut you down as easily as it can free you." The weight of those words hung in the air, thick with foreboding. Clara realized she was standing at the precipice of a dark revelation, the air crackling with the energy of what was yet to unfold. In that moment, she understood that her journey was not merely about the nun's past. It was also about confronting the darkness within herself, a mirror reflecting her own fears and insecurities. As the nun advanced, the shadows around her twisted and writhed like living things. "You have come too far," the nun whispered, her voice barely audible over the rising storm. "You must choose. Face the darkness or flee into the light." Clara took a shaky breath, determination igniting within her. "I will not run. I want to understand." With those words, the air around her shifted, a crackle of energy coursing through her veins. The nun's expression softened momentarily, a flicker of humanity breaking through the facade of madness. In that instant, Clara felt an inexplicable connection, a shared pain, a bond forged through suffering. But as quickly as it came, the moment dissipated, replaced by a maelstrom of chaos. The shadows roared to life, swirling around Clara as she felt herself being pulled into the heart of the nun's torment. As the darkness enveloped her, Clara knew that the true horror of the nun's legend lay not just in the supernatural, but in the depths of the human soul. She was on the brink of uncovering secrets that had long been buried, truths that could either liberate her or consume her. The choice was hers to make. With the chilling figure of the nun looming over her, Clara's journey into the heart of darkness had only just begun. What awaited her beyond the veil of fear and despair? Would she find redemption or become another lost soul entwined in the nun's tragic tale? As Clara stood in the chapel, enveloped by the shadows and the chilling presence of the nun, a decision loomed before her. Would she dare to confront the dark legacy that haunted this place? The air crackled with tension, a storm of emotions brewing within the very walls that had witnessed so much despair. In that moment, Clara realized that her quest for truth had transformed into a battle for survival, one that would expose the dark secrets binding her to the nun and unveil the true horror hidden behind the legend. Clara felt the air thicken around her as the nun took another step forward. The shadows danced wildly, swirling like a tempest, and Clara's heart raced in response. The once silent chapel seemed alive, breathing with the weight of history and sorrow. "You seek to understand me," the nun said, her voice an unsettling blend of anguish and power. "But understanding comes with a price." Clara's mind raced as she considered her options. She could feel the grip of fear tightening around her, but the flicker of determination burned brightly within her. "I want to know the truth," she managed to say, her voice steadying despite the terror coursing through her veins. The nun paused, her eyes dark and piercing, as if searching Clara's very soul. "Truth is a burden, child. It reveals the worst in us. Are you prepared to carry that weight?" Clara swallowed hard, recalling the words of the villagers. The tales of madness, betrayal, and unholy rites echoed in her mind. "I am," she replied, a steely resolve settling in her chest. "Whatever it takes." With a slow nod, the nun's expression shifted, revealing a flicker of something. Fear, perhaps, or sorrow. "Then let us begin." The shadows quivered in response, and the air around them grew thick with anticipation. As the nun lifted her hands, the room around Clara transformed. The chapel faded away, replaced by a vision of the past, a scene unfolding before her eyes. Clara found herself standing in a sunlit courtyard, vibrant and alive, filled with the laughter of children and the sound of hymns sung in harmony. The nun, once Sister Agnes, moved among them, her face radiant with joy. Clara watched, mesmerized, as the scene played out. She saw Sister Agnes teaching the children, her laughter ringing like bells, the light in her eyes pure and untainted. But as the vision shifted, the sunlight dimmed, shadows creeping in at the edges. Clara felt a pang of dread as she witnessed the transformation of joy into despair. The children grew older, their laughter fading into whispers of gossip and suspicion. Clara felt the weight of the nun's heartbreak as her faith began to fracture under the scrutiny of the village. "They called me a zealot," the nun's voice echoed in Clara's mind. "They feared what they did not understand." Clara stood witness as the villagers, once supportive, turned against Sister Agnes. Accusations of fanaticism were hurled like stones, and Clara could feel the pain radiating from the nun as her world crumbled around her. "I only sought to protect them," the nun lamented. "But in my desperation, I lost myself." The vision shifted again, plunging Clara into a darkened chamber, the very room she had discovered earlier. The walls closed in as Sister Agnes knelt before a makeshift altar, her eyes wild with fervor. Clara's heart raced as she realized this was the moment when Agnes had crossed the line between devotion and madness. The shadows around her writhed as she chanted incantations, seeking power that would ultimately lead to her undoing. "I thought I could save them," the nun's voice trembled with grief. "But I only condemned myself." Clara felt a wave of sorrow wash over her, understanding now that the nun was not merely a figure of horror but a tragic soul lost to her own convictions. The whispers grew louder, echoing the very fears that had consumed Agnes. "What have I become?" the nun cried out in anguish. The vision began to unravel, darkness swallowing the light. Clara felt herself being pulled back to the present, the chapel re-emerging around her. The nun stood before her, a mixture of pain and anger etched into her features. "You've seen my past," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now you must choose your own path." Clara's heart raced as she considered the gravity of the moment. "I want to help you," she said, her voice firm. "I can't let your story end in tragedy." The nun's eyes flickered with a mixture of hope and despair. "To help me, you must confront the darkness that resides within you. It feeds on fear, just as it did on my faith. Will you face it?" Before Clara could respond, the shadows began to writhe again, coiling around her as if alive. The atmosphere grew thick with an oppressive energy, and Clara felt a familiar sense of dread creeping back in. "What do I have to do?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "You must descend into the abyss," the nun replied, her tone grave. "Only by confronting your own fears can you release me from this torment." As the shadows closed in, Clara steeled herself. "I'll do it," she said, determination blazing within her. The nun nodded, her expression softening. With a sudden rush, the shadows enveloped Clara, dragging her down into a swirling void. She felt weightless, her surroundings shifting and morphing into a nightmarish landscape, a labyrinth of her own mind filled with echoes of her past, insecurities, and unspoken fears. In this dark realm, Clara faced manifestations of her own anxieties. Shadows loomed large, representing her failures, her doubts, and the fear of inadequacy that haunted her every step. As she wandered through the twisted paths, Clara saw visions of herself, a child alone in a dark room, an outcast among her peers, a woman doubting her worth. "Face me," Clara shouted into the void, her voice echoing back with a haunting familiarity. "I am not afraid." The shadows morphed, taking on the forms of her fears. Clara confronted each one, confronting the pain that had shaped her existence. With each acceptance, the shadows shrank, the weight of her fears lifting. "I am stronger than this," she declared, her voice growing bolder. Finally, she reached the heart of the abyss, a swirling vortex of darkness. Within it lay the essence of the nun, the anguish that had consumed her for so long. Clara took a deep breath, stepping forward into the maelstrom. "Agnes," Clara called, her voice steady. "I see your pain. I understand now. You are not alone." The darkness roared around her, but Clara pressed on, her heart full of empathy. "We can find peace together," she said, reaching out toward the swirling shadows. "You don't have to be trapped in this torment. Let go of the past." For a moment, time stood still. The shadows hesitated, and Clara felt a connection sparking between them, two lost souls seeking redemption in a world of despair. As she embraced the darkness, it began to dissolve, the anguish lifting like mist in the morning sun. With one final surge of strength, Clara pulled Agnes from the void. The darkness shattered around them, and the two figures stood entwined, their burdens shared and understood. The air crackled with energy as the shadows melted away, leaving only the light of hope. As the last remnants of despair faded, the nun's form transformed. The rage and sorrow that had twisted her spirit dissipated, revealing a figure filled with grace and tranquility. "Thank you," Agnes whispered, her voice gentle and filled with gratitude. "You have freed me." Clara felt a warmth spread through her, an overwhelming sense of release. The darkness that had threatened to consume them both had been vanquished, replaced by a radiant light. In that moment, Clara understood the true horror of the nun's story was not merely the tale of a tortured soul, but a reflection of the struggles that existed within all of us. As the light enveloped them, Clara felt herself being drawn back to the chapel. The air shimmered with a sense of peace, and she stood once more in the sacred space, the nun's spirit now freed from the chains of despair. The shadows had retreated, leaving behind an aura of tranquility that filled the room. "Your journey is just beginning," Agnes said softly, a serene smile gracing her lips. "You have the power to share our story, to shed light on the darkness that haunts so many. You are a beacon of hope." Clara's heart swelled with purpose as she realized the weight of her mission. No longer just a journalist seeking to uncover a chilling tale, she had become a vessel for change, a voice for the forgotten, the lost, and the tormented. "I will tell our story," she vowed, her spirit ignited by newfound resolve. As she stepped outside the convent, the village of Eldermere was transformed. The mist that once cloaked it in darkness now glimmered with promise. Clara knew she had a duty to share the truth about Sister Agnes, the strength of faith, and the power of understanding. The legend of the nun would live on, but this time it would be a story of redemption, healing, and hope. As Clara made her way down the path, the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating her journey ahead. She would carry the light of truth into the world, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is always a chance for redemption. And somewhere in the depths of the convent, a spirit at peace whispered a prayer of gratitude, knowing that her story would finally be told.